what we're doing. We don't want to mislead you in terms of what we can offer today. So you won't walk out of today with a new graduate syllabus that of an enlightened human. But I do think by the end of our sessions together that you might, for yourself and with people in many conversations, feel more confident, at least to know what work you need to do or could do in order to develop more responsive classes, to take into account that we're wrestling in our own different ways and from our own different subject positions with what it means to respond fully and wholeheartedly to the cause of Black Lives Matter and to the challenges that COVID is hitting us with every day, among other, the environmental challenge that we've seemed to kind of dropped out of the picture because we're so pressed by other things. So use the time, please be open and kind with one another. We hope the breakout rooms are places where you can be wrong and talk about that, because we're not going to get anywhere if we can't fail to progress. So thank you for being here. And Jennifer and Ashley, I don't know if you want to add anything. And I just can't wait to get going.
No, I am really excited to be here, and thank you all for coming. I'm going to be monitoring some email, and so if there's any kind of logistical things that maybe you need some help out with, I have a couple asterisks by my name so you can private message me at any time. So thank you for being here. We feel that this is that we are uniquely lucky to get to work with Fisher and Anna and their wonderful facilitation skills and hearts. So so don't hesitate to private message, but otherwise, I think we can dive in unless Jennifer has something to say.
All right.
Awesome.
Let's go ahead.
So I'm gonna do the thing I just said I dislike doing. I'm gonna go into screen share for just a minute to give us just the tiniest, shortest, hopefully briefest, least blathery, but it'll still be blathering introduction to today, and then we'll get right into some of the structures. So here we go. So just a little bit about how sort of today's organized or what to expect. So our hope is that everything we do is at least practical in some way, and that learning each method can be easeful. I'm not going to say easy, even though it says easy there. Maybe it's easeful to learn the methods. And part of what these methods are meant to do is try to include more of each person's intelligence, imagination, and creativity in order to achieve a purpose. So that's part of what we're trying to work with. The methods that we're exploring together are called liberating structures. We're going to look more carefully at them as a batch of methods at the end of today. So we're going to hold off on trying to describe or arrive at any conclusions about them until the end of today. But we will share some background as we go. Again, though, the focus more is on the experience and the application of the methods as opposed to the theory behind them. Although, again, we will share some of that. Again, for you, figure out what scales feel relevant, what topics you want to explore, and use that as much as you can in the interactions that we'll have. So you'll have opportunities kind of like localize the question or the prompt that we're working on. And you're invited to bring as much of your own focus or attention or practice forward into those conversations. The focus today is not necessarily on the technology, but hopefully you pick up on little things here and there. If you end up having questions about how we did something with the technology, we can always either hang out afterwards or try in the moment to respond, although oftentimes the technology conversations can involve more just hands-on playing around, so we might make time for that separately. There are 6 parts. Today is a little bit about orienting to these methods, a little bit about the background, the principles, and the DNA of the methods. The next sessions, if you're participating in them, will be about sort of the context of your own practice, how we expand graduate education, how we act our way into new thinking, and it concludes with some work around like taking the methods that we've experienced and looking at them in the context of your own courses or the experiences that you're contributing to in terms of graduate education. We're not doing it now, but when we get into the methods, we're just going to jump right into a method, experience it, and then pull back, debrief the content of the conversation, and then look at the method itself, the structure itself, and see what happened. While we're going to like kind of pay really close attention to the tiny structure, the microstructure, we also understand, you know, a lot of you are thinking about the larger learning arcs or the larger choices that you're making when it comes to thinking about education across a curriculum or across a course or across multiple courses. And so we also hope that you, and we'll try to make this explicit, that you question, inquire, critique our choices across the course of a session and across multiple sessions. So even though our attention is going to be oftentimes at the very micro scale, we also recognize that we're making choices at, you know, the 2-hour scale and across multiple sessions, and it'd be lovely to draw attention to that as well as we go, or at least invite you to pay attention to that. Just a little image about what this can feel like. So this is the immersive quality potentially of the sensation of being in an experience like this together. Some of the lenses that we bring, and we talked a lot with Jennifer and Ashley and Teresa about, that you might at different times bring forward or maybe like hold simultaneously as you're looking at the experience of these methods, are lenses of equity, lenses of complexity, learning and development, your own personal practice. You know, part of, I think, what we're hoping for is that we hold or can develop the capacity to hold multiple lenses simultaneously in order to look at what's happening in any given interaction, in any given method. So we'll try, mostly in the debriefs, to invite you to think about what lens you want to look at what happened through, or what lenses you want to look at the experience through. This is just sort of like saying we're going to try as best we can not to be certain about anything or too clear about anything. And, you know, from time to time we'll fall into our own trap of wanting to provide certainty and provide clarity. But our belief, at least, is that we trust your subconscious to do much of the sense making and synthesis and integration of learning, both right now and over time. So we're going to try not to prevent your subconscious from making its own discoveries by telling you what we think, even though we'll fall into the trap of that from time to time ourselves. This is just emphasizing kind of what we were saying, especially about your own practice. I really want to emphasize, you know, take care of yourself during this. Any content that we're talking about, please feel free to mutate it or alter it or change it so that it makes sense to you. We have some prompts, but if the prompt, you're just like, I don't like that prompt, or I don't get that prompt, feel free to work with a prompt or a question that is more relevant to you in the moment. I want to get through these pretty quickly, but I think it's important, especially the language liberating structures. I think obviously the language itself, the vocabulary of it, can feel like it maybe is inspired or comes directly from liberation practices or similar movements. It was not when it was developed originally or directly linked to anti-oppression movements or anti-oppression thinking. And so while the practices, the way it gets expressed, the use of complexity, the principles may complement or be connected in your experience to anti-oppression work, it does not come from there. It actually comes more from thinking about business settings and how to work across multiple locations in a business. And so I think it's just helpful to understand that that's not where it's coming from. And there may be similarities to the way in which anti-oppression movements are practiced that, are similar to some of the thinking or some of the background here as well. Anything you want to add about that, Anna? Similarly, there's no bigger movements that liberating structures are connected to. You can think of them kind of as existing between, among, as complements to lots of other methodologies, lots of other approaches. They don't have a thing that they are necessarily part of, other than the way in which complexity has informed the development of the method. So there is some connection to more formal studies of complexity, but that's about the only thing that they're attached to. Many of the methods may feel familiar, but the contribution I think that the developers who we'll talk about towards the end made is that they kind of compiled them all in a similar way with a similar logic and a similar language. And so I think that, a lot of these things may feel familiar or may come from other methods that you're used to or know about. And there's no claim to originality, I don't think, in the work itself. And yeah, we'll try our best when there's a method that's connected to a specific inspiration. We'll do the best we can to mention where that comes from, and that those histories are incomplete. They sometimes go back generationally. Sometimes there's a particular person who can be attributed, and we'll do our best to do that where we can. And sometimes that history is not fully complete, and so we can't give the full version of it. And with that, Anna's going to take us into the first part of this.
Yeah, so the plan that we have for today, we are in the landing and welcome, which is probably pretty obvious. We're going to start out doing some work with the liberating structures principles. We feel like they give you a little bit of a window in pretty early into sort of the sensibility and some of the complexity underpinnings of liberating structures. And then we'll do some self-reflection using the spiral journal. And we'll go into a pretty complex conversation using Conversation Cafe. Conversation Cafe is one of the structures that we have been using a lot as we move through these last few months, and we'll talk a little bit more about why that is. And then we'll do some more orienting to the DNA and talk about some between time options that you have between this and the next session, and we'll close out. So can you pop to the next one? Let's go ahead and do a little bit of a technical, there's a script for that down in the, so if you can pop us out of the screen share. So I'm going to be doing a little bit more of the Zoom hosting today. So I'll be probably putting a little bit more in the chat. What